Surprise! A last ditch live stream here. I am watching a stream since DAZN isn't available in the country where I reside. And even if it was, I probably wouldn't get it anyway because I don't like the way they treat their customers, because I have been a DAZN customer in the past. Anyway, seconds away from the first round of Itauma Franklin. I'm expecting this fight to go rounds. Unless there's a controversial stoppage, I'm expecting it to go rounds. And yeah, here we go. Bell for round one is just gone. The reason I pointed out I'm watching a stream is because I might be several seconds behind you guys. So Itauma comes out on the front foot, feinting at Jermaine Franklin. That's a sharp right jab there from Itauma. Left hand to the body. Franklin has gotten rid of the dreadlocks. He's now got a short haircut. Another left hand to the body from Itauma. Franklin trying to answer with a jab. Franklin's a very tough guy. That was a nice check right hook from Itauma. Follows up with a left to the body. Franklin tries to counter but falls short. So the typical kind of aggressive start from Itauma. Franklin looking to counter where he can. That's a right hand to the chest from Franklin. Check right hook again from Itauma. Left to the body, right to the head from Itauma. Left to the body. Itauma really loading up on these shots here. I think Itauma might be a little too aggressive here, to be honest, in the early going. I think he needs to just settle down. Is he a bit excited because of the occasion? I don't know, but I think he needs to settle it down a little bit because he's really letting go some very, very heavy shots. Nice jab again from Itauma on Franklin's eye. Left hand was blocked by Franklin. I mean, a lot of, ooh, nearly a left uppercut there from Itauma, just missed by a whisker. I mean, some of Itauma's previous opponents, well, they were out of here by now, but they would have been out even quicker had he unloaded on them like this so early in the fight. But Franklin made a sterner stuff. Blocks a big left hand attempt there from Itauma. This is a 10-rounder. Itauma might want to remind himself of that. Right hand to the body from Franklin. Itauma's landed some clean jabs and a couple of check hooks, but ooh, left hand from Itauma forces Franklin back to the ropes. Franklin ducks the follow-up left from Itauma. Nice jab there from Itauma. Another very sharp jab on the front foot. Left to the chest from Itauma. So he's really... Oh, big left hand from Itauma was a nice shot. Again, Franklin very tough, stubborn. He knows how to look after himself. He hasn't come to lay down. Oh, good shots from Itauma. Oh, Franklin is hurt. Trying to fire back, but he was definitely wobbled there. Itauma's speed as usual. Ooh. That's the end of the round. Itauma's speed as usual, causing all sorts of problems for the opponent. He is just ridiculously fast for a fighter of his size. I mean, just very, very fast. But as I said during the round, Itauma might just want to settle it down a little bit because it's as if he's going for the first round knockout. Normally, Itauma just boxes his way into the fight. He doesn't necessarily go for a KO unless he lands a big shot, hurts his opponent, then he'll step on it. But here, it's as if he's come out in the first round going for the KO immediately. And, you know, they might just want to rein him in a little bit in the corner. Great shots from Itauma there, and then steps off to the side to avoid a counter. Anyway, here we go, round two. Itauma versus Franklin. Franklin took a bit of a shellac in there, but he's still on his feet. He's still in the fight. He's trying to throw back. He's trying to protect himself as best he can. Itauma feinting up and down with the right hand. I've seen some people, oh, nice right again up front from Itauma. I've seen some people say that Itauma doesn't have a great jab. I mean, he does pull with the jab quite a bit, but when he wants to stick it with resolution, he can do that, and he's certainly done that in this fight several times. Some stinging jabs. Nice left hand to the body from Itauma. Again, Franklin has been the rounds many times. He knows how to negotiate a 10-rounder. Knows how to look after himself in there. He's been a sparring partner for many top fighters over the years. On thousands and thousands of rounds with top guys. So, like I say, he knows his way around the boxing ring and how to avoid being blasted out. That's a nice right hand to the body from Franklin. Itauma responds with a left hand to the body. Itauma feinting, right jab in Franklin's face. Another beautiful right jab from Itauma. Very sharp. Feinting. Left hand to the body from Itauma. Franklin comes back with a right hand to Itauma's body. Left hand to the body again from Itauma. Right hook to the body from Itauma. Itauma answering back with interest whenever he gets hit in the body. Oh, big left hand from Itauma. Franklin sticks out his tongue as if to show he's not hurt. Itauma looking to land the uppercut, but very, very high. I don't think I've seen such high volume from Itauma early in a fight. I'm not sure if that's particularly wise, to be honest, with an opponent like this, who is so durable, who's got such a reputation for durability. Oh, big left hand from Itauma. Franklin shakes his head as if to say, I'm not hurt, but you don't want to get hit with too many of those. Again, plenty of other heavyweights would have been on the floor from that shot. A few seconds left. Okay, Franklin comes back. Oh, takes a big left hand, though. Tries to come back against Itauma, but is punished for doing so. That's the end of round 2. Itauma breathing quite heavy there as he sits on his stool. Again, I do think Ben Davison and Lee Wiley need to calm him down a bit. Because to me, the work rate is a bit unnecessarily high so early on in the fight. And it's kind of uncharacteristic of Itauma, is it? I mean, he was landing some nice shots, but again, Franklin was taking him. That was a beautiful left hand from Itauma. Franklin took it. He's a very tough man. Great shot. And Carl Frampton's pointing it out now as well in the commentary, saying that Itauma needs to be careful about maybe using too much energy early in the fight. So anyway, here we go, round 3. You know, with these seasoned vets like Franklin, they can take a beating and still have something left in the tank later on. You know what I mean? They're used to taking beatings. Oh, again, Itauma really loading up with a left hand. I've never seen him so aggressive this early, other than maybe his first couple of fights. But against anyone with even a pulse, he's not normally this hyper-aggressive. 2 shots from Itauma were decent there. But yeah, I do wonder whether maybe the time out the ring, the expectations on Itauma have resulted in this hyper-aggression in this fight. People saying he needs to knock Franklin out, otherwise it's a poor performance, which I never really understood. I mean, Franklin went the distance with Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua, and that was when Joshua was coming off 2 fights with Usyk where he went the distance. Why would it... You know, why would Itauma be seen as basically having failed if he doesn't knock out a guy that Joshua couldn't knock out when Joshua was a 2-time heavyweight champion, just coming off 2 championship fights? Strange. Anyway, Itauma a little bit more measured in this 3rd round, which I do think is wise. Oh, again, loading up massively with the left hand, which Jermaine Franklin blocks. Itauma feinting. Franklin just biding his time. He's got into his shell a little bit, Franklin. Obviously, he's wary of the speed. More so than the punching power, because he's been in there with big punches before. Potentially bigger punches than Itauma. But Itauma has speed, which I'm sure he's never seen before, at least not in the pro ring. Good body shots by Itauma seem to bother Franklin momentarily there. But this is a better pace here, I think. Oh, down goes Franklin for the first time in his career, as far as I'm aware. It was from a right hand from Moses Itauma. First time I'm aware that he's ever been down. Wow, 18 seconds left in round 3. Will Itauma go for the KO? How badly hurt is Franklin? Was it more of a balance thing? Or is he legitimately hurt? Franklin comes with a wild right hand there. That's the end of round 3 to save Jermaine Franklin. I'd like to see a replay. To me, it looked like he was maybe a little off balance. I think he was maybe swinging his own shot while he got clipped. Don't get it twisted, it was a legitimate knockdown, but balance may have played a part in it. Let me see. So here's the replay. Yep, he did appear to be a little off balance when the shot landed, like he was trying to land it, throw his own left. Let me see here again. Franklin closing his eyes there, which is unusual for a vet like him. Very unusual, but he's so on edge because of the speed of Itauma. He's flinching before the shot's even close to landing. So that's Franklin down for the first time in his professional career. Going into round 4 here against young Moses Itauma, just 21 years of age. Itauma on the front foot again. Oh, big right hand again from Itauma. It's the left and the southpaw right. The front hand. Oh, again, Itauma really loading up with the shots. He throws the backhand and it's like the reverse 1-2. The extremely fast southpaw left, followed by the lead right. And it's the lead right which keeps catching Franklin. I mean, Itauma really ridiculously fast with the hands. Franklin doesn't appear to be particularly hurt here. So again, I think there was an element of balance in that 3rd round knockdown because he doesn't appear to be a concussed fighter. He's trying to fire back here, Franklin, but he's under heavy, heavy fire. Itauma feinting, walking forward behind that southpaw right jab. Dangling the right jab now. Up and down with the feints. Body shot there from Itauma. Franklin in full sparring partner mode at the moment. Just trying to get through the rounds. Occasionally throwing a shot back. But a young 21-year-old from Chatham in Kent having everything all his own way so far. Big left hand again from Itauma. Franklin's activity dropping way down after that knockdown. Just over a minute left in the 4th. Franklin will be looking for one punch. There's a right hand to the body from Franklin. Another right hand to the body from Franklin. He might switch that right hand to the head if Itauma keeps getting that close. Itauma will be well advised to just step off to his right a bit here. His own right, not Franklin's right. Jab there from Itauma. Franklin comes back with a couple jabs. Oh, again, Itauma with that wickedly fast left. I think that caught Franklin on the shoulder. Oh, Franklin tries to come back with his own right. Itauma just pulled his head out of range. Again, sharp jabs from Itauma on the front foot. Wicked left hand, but Franklin was wise to it. Managed to duck underneath. Franklin manages to get Itauma against the ropes there at the back end of the round. A rare moment of him actually pushing Itauma back. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Big up James Wood for the super chat. Yes, yes. So I did expect this fight to go rounds, as I said before the opening bell, and as I said in my live stream yesterday, I expected this fight to go rounds. I think I said at least 7 or 8 rounds. Because again, Franklin is no great shakes, but he is a tough, tough man. He's a wily old vet. He's been there, seen it, done it. He knows how to survive. He knows how to tuck up, and do you know what I mean? He's got a good chin. So I did expect this fight to go rounds. Here we go, round number 5. Itauma with a left hand to the body, really trying to beat Franklin up here and break him down. Right jab from Itauma. Franklin with his back to the ropes. Itauma's obviously won every round so far. Just needs to stay focused, and Franklin needs to look for that one shot. Needs to hope that Itauma overextends so he can catch him with something. Right hook from Itauma. But the thing is, right, when you're in there with a fighter as fast as Itauma, you can get overwhelmed in the early rounds. But then as the fight goes on, if you're still there, you can start to get used to the speed. And obviously, Itauma's going to slow down some as the rounds progress. Oh, big right hook again from Itauma. And he really loads up with a backhand to follow up. Oh, God, you can hear the power behind them lefts. Is crazy. The sound of the shots is different. Not only different to most heavyweights, but different to the way Itauma's shots normally sound. He's really spiteful in this fight. That's fighting like Franklin stole something from him. Big left hand from Itauma again. Franklin swings back. Dear, oh dear. Almost midway through round number 5. Itauma wants that stoppage. Oh, uppercut. Oh, Franklin's hurt down. He goes on his face. The fight is surely over. The fight is over. Oh my days. A crazy one-punch knockout by Moses Itauma. People, that was crazy. Okay, Jermaine Franklin is no great shakes, but this is a very tough man who went the distance with AJ, went the distance with Dillian Whyte, never came close to going down against those guys. Itauma comes in 5 rounds, dominates every second of every round. He don't get a bloody nose like AJ did against Franklin. He don't get wobbled like Dillian Whyte did against Franklin and taken very close on the scorecards. No, he goes in there, dominates the guy, beats him from pillar to post, knocks him out. Man lands face first after one punch from Moses Itauma. Crazy. Crazy. If you can't see that this young man is special, no, look, again, I'm not saying he just beat a top heavyweight. He didn't. But when you compare his performance against this heavyweight to top heavyweights that have fought Franklin, it's night and day. All right, it's chalk and cheese. And just the eye test alone, the speed at which he punches, the ferocity, the punching power, the variety, the snap on the shots, the jab. I mean, that left uppercut was crazy. Like, seriously, this kid is a prodigy. How can anyone not see it? Because there are people out there preying on Itauma's downfall. I have no idea why. Why? Oh, he gets hype. Of course he gets hype. He was, looking at the replay there of the uppercut. What a shot. What a shot. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I mean, unbelievable shot. Franklin, I mean, he just got disintegrated. What a uppercut. Unbelievable. Again, yeah, Itauma's got a lot of hype behind him. That doesn't mean he's a hype job. Okay, like what do you expect to happen when a prodigy comes along? They're supposed to have no hype behind them? They're supposed to be fighting in obscurity on Mick Hennessy's small halls and on leisure center shows where no one ever hears about them until they're 25-0? What kind of stupid nonsense is that? Obviously, if there's a prodigy in the amateurs, he's going to get scouted by a big promoter today. And that's what's happened with Itauma. Clearly a child prodigy. Look at Dubois' face. Bro, Dubois looks shaken. I'm telling, because Dubois was the one who was getting all the smoke in the gym from Itauma, according to his then trainer, Shane McGuigan. That's the first I heard of Itauma, was when Shane McGuigan was saying, this Itauma kid is unbelievable. I've had him in the gym sparring Dubois, and he said holding his own, but he was training Dubois at the time. So if he's saying a 17-year-old kid, as Itauma was then, is holding his own against Dubois, I take that to mean Itauma was actually getting the better of it. Because who would want to admit their fighter is going life and death with a 17-year-old? Where the 17-year-old is holding their own with your fight. No trainer is going to want to admit that. So, this kid is a prodigy. He will obviously face much sterner tests than Jermaine Franklin in future. He obviously has to answer the questions about the chin, the stamina in a tough fight, his IQ if he's in there against somebody who is high-level IQ, how he deals with different size of opponent, power, all that kind of stuff. But his offensive capabilities are flipping crazy. I mean, they're crazy. Again, people love the Mike Tyson comparisons and they love basically dumping on Itauma over those comparisons. He's nothing like Mike Tyson as far as style. Okay, the comparison is there because of the age, right? And the fact they were both prodigies coming up. But you look at Mike Tyson when he was 14-0. Itauma's now 14-0. Mike Tyson was fighting puddings and pies in his first 14 fights. Oh, yes, he was. Don't ever get that twisted. But that's never criticized, is it? It's only with Itauma that they want to go overboard criticizing every opponent. Like, give it a rest. He is a prodigy. This is not normal what you're seeing. It's not normal when he was 14, 15, sparring with world-level cruiserweights and heavyweights and trying to give him the business. That is not normal, folks. Stop acting like this is normal, all right? What we're seeing here is a prodigy, somebody who has the potential to be very, very special indeed. Now, all the potential that Itauma has doesn't mean he's going to fulfill the potential. He might turn out to have some kind of critical flaw that we haven't yet seen. But as things stand right now, all right, his trajectory is very steep upwards. It just is. All right, this is not your regular schmegular prospect in the heavyweight division. So get that out of your minds. Anyway, ran over. Obviously, I was excited by the performance. It was, again, a brutal beating of Jermaine Franklin. Shout out to Matt Borgerson for the super chat. Just listening to Ade on the post-fight interview. Shout out to Spartan Will. He says, big up Hatman, not sure about Franklin's toughness, only look crafty against low volume. Shot White and Scared AJ Best channel on YouTube. I'm sure about his toughness because he got hit clean by both of those guys. And he got hit clean by Itauma on multiple occasions before he eventually got crumpled. So I'm sure about his toughness, but Itauma was just hitting him too many times. Hitting him constantly clean on the chin, wobbling him. Franklin never got the opportunity to clear his head. The shots were coming in so thick and fast, he just don't give you the opportunity to recover. But big up for the super chat. Shout out to Matt Borgerson. He says, Franklin hit him so hard. Oh, excuse me. I guess he meant to say Itauma hit him so hard he made Franklin go in to a career drama death scene. Big up GMS Nightmare for the super chat. He says his hand speed is ridiculous. Moses will clean up this division. No heavyweight can handle this type of speed. Franklin was gassing after 3. Let's listen to the interview here. Okay, Itauma actually said he tried to knock Franklin out in the first or second round to try and win a few people some dough. That's crazy. So I guess he had friends or whatever that had money on him winning in the first couple rounds, and he went out there fighting the way that he did to try and give them a leg up. I mean, how's that for confidence? Unbelievable. They're asking him who next. Warren says he'll probably be out in July. I think Hrgović is the next step. If he can't get Hrgović, Vianello. You know, I'm super baffled if anyone is critical of this performance. Like, I'm just completely baffled. Like, Franklin got a gift in his last fight over Ivan Ditchko, but Ivan Ditchko was a top-level amateur for years. He never came close to stopping Franklin. AJ and White hit Franklin clean. Sent spray flying. They never came close to stopping him. Itauma's gone in there with far less experience than any of those guys, amateur and pro. Well, other than Dylan White, he had more experience than Dylan White as an amateur. But certainly far less experience than AJ and Ditchko as an amateur, and certainly as a pro when it comes to AJ. And yet he goes in there and just demolishes Franklin like that. He's probably had harder sessions on the heavy back. So Itauma's saying he wanted the Hrgović fight. Basically called out Hrgović. Yeah. That's who I think he should be going for now. Filip Hrgović. But Hrgović will want a king's ransom to fight Itauma. And I can't blame him. Man's only 14-0. His best win is Jermaine Franklin. Where's the appeal for Hrgović? If we're going to be perfectly honest about it. Frank Warren doesn't have the Saudis behind him. So this is going to be a difficult phase of Itauma's career, these next few fights. Because obviously his profile is building, but he's nowhere near popular enough yet to command enormous purses and therefore pay potential opponents the kind of sums they're going to want to get in with him. I'm talking about name brand opponents. Yeah, ideally Hrgović would be the next guy. Hrgović is obviously a lot better than Franklin. No one can doubt Hrgovic's chin, like, give it a rest. And Hrgović is a winner. He's not a habitual loser like Franklin, he's a winner. He isn't a massive puncher, but he is quite skilled offensively. But then again, he gets hit relatively easily. He's a tall guy, totally different dimensions to a Franklin. Throws a lot of shots. So I'd like to see that next if they can get it over the line, but I'm a little skeptical that they will be able to be honest. A little skeptical about that. So that's the fight done. Some people are saying it's Itauma versus Miller. Someone's saying Turkey will pay it, don't worry. Well, Turkey and Frank Warren are no longer on good terms. So unless they can patch up what seems like an irreconcilable relationship, then, no, man. The box says Hrgović cuts too easily. Well, yeah, that's a good point, actually. He does cut very easily. Shout out to Ricky Torres. He says, let's get Hagler Hearns round 1. Not White, Itauma round 1. Okay. Funny G says, Moses' hands were so fast in round 1. Yeah, they were. Itauma's speed is frightening. Like, real talk, his hand speed is crazy. It's very, very strange to see a guy that size. What is he, 242 pounds? Who moves his hands that quick? It's very, very, it's a very strange thing to see. Yeah, absolutely. When Itauma even hits the guard, it looks painful. I've never seen a fight where Itauma was so bent on causing damage. TMC, suck your mum. You're an idiot. You're a bum. Your mum's a bum. You don't know anything about boxing. Yes, I have boxed. I boxed from the age of 12 to my late 20s, you idiot. Suck your mum. You don't know anything about boxing. You just come here talking rubbish. You don't know anything about the sport. I boxed myself for years as an amateur. Been watching boxing since the 80s. I watched the prime Mike Tyson fight. Did you? You're a bum. Your mum's a bum. Your whole family are bums. Suck your mama, idiot. Come up off my life, waste man. You gotta stick it on these bums sometime. I'm coming out here talking a whole heap of mess. Yeah, we ain't doing that today. Damn right he's a jealous man. These men are weirdos. Bottom feeders, crabs at the bottom of the barrel, trying to pull people down. Weirdos. Go suck your mama. Here we got another idiot. I built my channel slagging off Fury. No, I didn't. My channel was already like 70, 80,000 subscribers deep. No, I built my channel analyzing boxing, you waste man. I was slagging off Fury. Fury built his whole reputation slagging off AJ and slagging off Usyk. How about that? And when donuts and idiots like you, who are lapping up all Fury's BS, all of his lies and gaslighting, it was down to the likes of me to call it out so he couldn't get away with ducking Usyk for years the way he did. It was the likes of me gathering people, gathering boxing fans to put pressure on Partridge to actually fight Usyk. That's what I was doing. I was doing boxing a service when bums like you were just lapping everything Partridge set up. All the lies and the gaslighting and yeah, that's what you were doing. Bum. All the Partridge fanboys are out here now too. Look at that. You'll suck your mama too. D-Man says, can you believe I saw a comment saying Moses has no talent? These men are weird. These men are so weird. Yes, the Fury fluffers, that's what it is. The Fury fluffers are going to come out and attack anyone who takes the limelight away from Partridge. Let's call him Partridge. We're not calling him no Fury again. Partridge. Anyone that they feel is a threat to the limelight that Partridge has, they want to attack them. They don't want to give him the credit. Unbelievable. There you go, Telstar. He says, it's funny, Hatman, because I started watching you due to the Fury Klitschko video. Yeah, that was me giving Fury all the credit in the world, saying it was thanking Fury for taking boxing out of the Dark Ages. But unfortunately, Fury turned into Harvey Dent. He turned into Harvey Two-Face. He started off as Harvey Dent, cleaning up Gotham City. But then he went on to become a villain. Harvey Dent, Harvey Two-Face, Luke Partridge. Kira Malcolm says, don't listen to the BS Hatman, they want you to bite. Yeah, they want me to bite. I don't mind biting tonight. I'm on one. They ain't draining my energy. They're putting a battery in my back. I don't mind biting tonight. Some nights I'm like, nah. But tonight I want all the smoke. All the smoke. So now Fabio Wardley's being interviewed. He's criticizing Franklin's corner team for not pulling him out, because he was taking a horrible beating in there. But again, he's a tough guy. His team have never seen that done to him before. You know, they might have never seen him in that kind of position in the gym before, so maybe they were like, well, Jermaine can take it. Shout out to Jake Jones. He says, yo, Hatman, it was you that introduced me to Itauma when he first signed for Warren. Did you seriously see this talent before turning pro? Yeah, I mean, it was Shane McGuigan that I first heard about Itauma from. And I went to go check out his amateur fights, and it was like immediate. I was like, okay, Shane McGuigan was not capping. Right? When I looked at them amateur fights, when he was in the Euros, European Championship Juniors, I was like, okay, yeah, the talent is very obvious here. Big up Activistic Intellect. He says, Hatman coming with the WWF promos. Love that you're doing live watch-alongs again. F the bums. Big up Activistic Intellect. I'm on one. The box says Franklin's team were complaining about the stoppage. Oh my God. You can't, what? Franklin's team? No. Are you sure? Franklin's team were complaining about the stoppage. What are they, Satanists or something? They were trying to see a human sacrifice conducted in the middle of the ring? What? Yo, that's wild. What do you mean? They were complaining. Huh? What the hell? Yo, that quarter team need locking up. Complaining about the stoppage. Yo, I thought that if there was a stoppage in this fight, now here's the wild thing, right? I expected this fight to go rounds, and I was kind of leaning more to the side of it going the distance, to be honest. And I thought if there was a stoppage, it'll probably be Franklin on his feet and the referee jumping in maybe a little early and complaining, Franklin complaining about that. But there was nothing like that in this fight. Franklin was knocked out with a left uppercut, and he went down face first. The ref had to wave it off. The man had taken nothing but an absolute shellacking for the whole fight. And now his team is saying, oh, it was premature. What is wrong with these people? Premature? Dear, oh dear. Well, they don't have Franklin's best interests at heart, then, do they? Good grief. Unbelievable. How weird is that? Let me just turn my mic down a little bit because I'm shouting and screaming over here. Want to cause too much distortion? Shout out to Demon. He says, dare I say it, most talent I've seen since Mike. Cobzilla says, was Itauma sparring heavyweights at 14? Yes, he was. He was sparring world level heavyweights and world level cruiserweights at, about 15, 14, 15. Certainly when he was 15, he was sparring the likes of Joyce, Lawrence Okolie, Anthony Joshua around that time, 14, 15, 16. And he wasn't going in there having a move around with them. He was actually taking it to him. And they were struggling to contain him. That, folks, that is not normal. I don't know why people just brush off those kind of sparring stories like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. No, it actually does mean something. It's not normal for a kid of that age to be going in against experienced cruiserweights and heavyweights at world level and holding his own. It's very strange. That alone should alert you to the fact that there's something different going on here with this kid. Now again, potential and sparring doesn't necessarily equate to elite level success in the pros. So I want to be very clear with what I'm saying here. Yeah? Itauma is obviously a prodigy. This is obviously a very special talent with enormous potential, but potential is just potential. You have to go out there and actually act on the potential, and there can't be any glaring, yet to be discovered weaknesses that prevent him from fulfilling that potential. And there's still the possibility that there is, okay? But it's hard not to get excited about a heavyweight with this type of offensive prowess at this age, 21. It's wild, the stuff that he's doing in the ring at that size, 242 pounds, you know? It's wild. Big up Copezilla for the super chat. Big up D-Man. Big up Spartan Willie says, Hatman, do you see Moses versus Opataya at heavy? Love Opataya, but he gets splattered. I mean, again, Itauma is so formidable offensively. There's no, let's just cut straight to the chase. If Itauma's landing shots on Opataya like he landed on Franklin, obviously Opataya is going to sleep. I think we can all agree on that. If Itauma lands like that on Opataya, Opataya is going to sleep. But Opataya will be a lot more complicated than Franklin. Franklin is a fat plodder who's limited offensively, so he's there to be teed off on. okay? With Opataya, you get movement. He's throwing punches back. He's fast himself. So it's a much more difficult puzzle in terms of having to defend himself for Itauma. So I do want to be realistic about that. But certainly, you know, if Itauma manages to land on Opataya's chin with shots like that, obviously the fight is over. Shout out to Relatively Comprehensive for the Super Chasers. Aside from Usyk, the only guy I can see being able to cope with Itauma's speed and skill is Opataya, but I don't know if his chin can stand up at heavyweight. Big up Relatively Comprehensive. Joshua Hooker says, who do you think wins between Moses and Partridge right now? Again, it is difficult. I don't want to get too carried. I'm obviously excited about the potential this young kid has. I'm obviously excited. I don't know why any true boxing fan wouldn't be excited about his potential. I don't want to say that I would pick him over Partridge right now because we haven't seen so many questions answered. But what I will say is if he fought Partridge now and won, I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't shock me because Partridge is 37. There's a lot of wear and tear. Itauma has sparred Partridge many times. He was in 2 camps, right? The 2 Usyk camps. So he knows Partridge's moves. But I don't want to flat out say I would pick him over Partridge right now again, because Partridge has been there, seen it, done it. Itauma hasn't. But like I say, if Itauma were in some random scenario to fight Partridge next that he won, I wouldn't be shocked. Shout out to Wolves for the Super Chat. He says, Franklin's team probably betted survive till the 10th. You know what? That's not a bad shout there. Is that why they were so angry? Is that why they're so angry? Noor Hussein says Luke Porridge. And to me, look, maybe I'm reading into something that isn't there because I'm just excited by the performance. But when I saw Dubois at ringside, he looked shaken to me. And remember, Dubois is a guy that's been in the ring with Itauma many times in the gym. And from my vantage point, I saw a shaken man. I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing things. But to me, what I saw in Dubois was a man who saw the future and it didn't look bright for him. That's how it looked to me. Like he had the look of a man who was thinking, that, damn, I've got to face this guy at some point. I'm not looking forward to that. Ali says Dubois was not shaking. Well, he looked shaken to me. He had nervous eyes, from what I could see. And he tried to play it off by clapping and all that, but to me, his eyes looked nervous. Witnessing what Itauma did there. Encircled says he thinks Itauma's going to steal his crayons. Well, for Dubois, that would be a frightening prospect. Huh? Free Coffee Guy says he had the I left the oven look on. Big up Charles B in the chat. Someone says Usyk would destroy him. Okay. I'm not saying he's ready for Usyk. Usyk's been there, seen it, done it. He's at the top of the game. I'm not calling for Itauma to be thrown in with Usyk right now. He's had 14 fights, you know? Charles B says, if I was Usyk, I would avoid. Well, at this stage, there's no real incentive for Usyk to fight him. You know? Itauma's not a mandatory. He is highly ranked, but he's not a mandatory. Itauma hasn't beaten anyone of note in the top 10. So there's no incentive for Usyk to fight him. Itauma's not a big cash cow yet. So, you know, there's no incentive for Usyk to fight him right now. Activist the Intellect says, how long does AJ last with Itauma? I'd say 2 or 3. You know what? I would not argue with that. Styles make fights. I would not argue with AJ maybe lasting 2 or 3 rounds against Itauma. The speed is crazy. He's got that, you know, reckless, and he's not that reckless in terms of, you know, from a technical perspective, but he's very aggressive with the shots he lets go. He loads up. He's got that youthful confidence about him. And we saw what that youthful confidence did to AJ in the Dubois fight. So, yeah, exactly, Charles B. Not saying he wouldn't beat Itauma, but I wouldn't run the risk. And again, you can't really blame Usyk for not wanting to run the risk at this stage, because there are more deserving heavyweights of a title shot than Itauma. The Punch Drunkard says Moses was gasping about after round 3, maybe something to work on. Yeah, I don't think it was a stamina issue there. It's just the fact that Itauma was throwing a crazy number of shots and loading up in those first couple of rounds. And that's why I was saying during the fight, he needs to slow it down a bit. Like, he's throwing all sorts of huge shots, and he's a 242-pound man. You need to be mindful of your gas tank. It's a 10-rounder, you know what I mean? You're in against the tough guy. But obviously his judgment of his own abilities was better than mine because, well, he knows himself better than I do. Obviously. Shout out to World is Cooked. Would Jarrell Miller cause him problems? I think Miller would cause him more problems than Franklin for sure. Miller's chin is even more proven than Franklin's chin. He's bigger. He's a lot more confident than Franklin. He's more aggressive, physically stronger. He's got a lot more self-belief. But if you're going off recent performances, you'd obviously favor Itauma heavily, even against Miller at this stage, especially if it's another 10-rounder. You know, Itauma is ridiculously talented, but we do have to remember that he is only 14 fights in. Only 14 fights in. All right. Bear in mind, you think about the great heavyweights of the past. They weren't challenging for titles in their 15th fight. You know what I mean? Most of them. Mike Tyson was, what, 26 fights in or something like that? Will he challenge Berbick? Lennox Lewis, I forget how many fights he was in. Close to 20. Or maybe a bit over 20. Luke Partridge even, when he challenged for a title, what was he, 24, 23, 24 and 0 or something when he fought Klitschko? Yeah, AJ did get a title shot 17 fights in. And I always said that AJ was rushed and he shouldn't have done that. But that's the Hearn philosophy, is make a huge profit as quickly as possible, even if it's occasionally at the detriment of the fighter's development. Big up the chicken connoisseur. You know the thing. He's tuned in. He says, Zhang is dangerous for everyone because of his sheer weight of his hands. Caballero dealt with him though. Yeah, but the thing about Zhang is that he's only got gas in the tank for about 3 or 4 rounds. After that, he's cooked against any of the top guys. But still, against the Itauma, I don't know whether you want to put Itauma in against a guy like him after only 40. And I say put Itauma in against Hrgović, because Hrgović is tough. He's obviously fought Zhang himself, got a controversial win over him. But Hrgović don't punch like Zhang. So put Itauma in with Hrgović, and he called Hrgović out after the fight. See how well he deals with Hrgović, if they can even get that fight. Because again, these big names, or bigger names in the heavyweight division, they're going to want a king's ransom to get in with this young boy. From their perspective, what's in it for me? You're putting me in there against potentially one of the best heavyweights in the world right now, but he doesn't have a huge pay-per-view level following. I know the Dylan White fight was pay-per-view, but, you know, whatever. I'm talking about big numbers on pay-per-view following. And if you're not going to pay me a king's ransom, where's the incentive for me to fight this young boy? That's what even the Hrgović level guys are going to be thinking right now. Big up Charles B says, do you think Davison is the right man to take Moses to the top? You know, it's interesting. I forget who was saying this the other day, but I was watching some podcast or some interview the other day, and they were saying that sometimes, in fact, it might have been Dominic Ingle on Boxing King Media. He was saying sometimes a great fighter or a great talent can carry a not so great trainer. It's like the not so great trainer's limitations can be masked by the talent of the fighter. You know? So when you have a really talented fighter like Itauma, sometimes it's difficult to know how good the trainer is. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's difficult to know because the fighter's talent is so outlandish. It's only when you get Itauma in those deep waters and he's actually tested by somebody, that's when you'll find out whether Ben Davison's the right guy for him. But as things stand right now, I mean, Itauma's doing everything right. He's doing everything he's supposed to do, isn't he? You can't complain about what he's doing to the guys that he's being put in with. Chicken Connoisseur says, yeah, true, the whole top 10 is on notice. Big up Spartan Willie says, Itauma versus the version of Bacoli who beat Anderson. What do you reckon? See, now these are real fights. That version of Bacoli, I mean, I would probably slightly favor Itauma, to be honest, but it's a different kettle of fish to the Franklins of the world. Let's be real. You know, Franklin, there was never a question of if Itauma would win the fight. He was always going to win the fight. He was a big favorite with the bookies. The vast majority of us, 99.9%, were picking Itauma to win. It was just a matter of how he won. Would he blast Franklin out? Would he be frustrated and maybe taking the distance or into the latter part of the fight? Whereas with Bacoli, there is a question, at least in my mind, the version of Bacoli who fought Anderson, would Itauma actually win? You know, like there's a chance that that version of Bakole might be able to do something depending on whether Itauma has the intangibles. Does he have the chin? Does he have the stamina? How does he deal with a guy as strong as that version of Bakole? I mean, if Itauma fought the version of Bakole who fought Parker, Itauma smokes him. Even the version of Bakole who fought Ejagba. You know, this is the issue with hypotheticals. You get guys like Bakole who don't dedicate themselves to boxing. The man does have some talent, but boy, he's let himself go. He's up there in Scotland eating fried Mars bars and God knows what else. Rodis Cook says, don't matter who the trainer is, he's going to win world titles, natural talent. That's one thing that I can confidently say about Itauma. Itauma is going to win a world title. I can say that confidently. It would literally shock me if he didn't win a world title at some point. There's just too much talent there for him not to. But the question is, will he become a dominant champion? Will he become a great champion? That remains to be seen. The jury's still out on that. But in my mind, I've got no doubt that he will go on to win a world title at some stage, bare minimum. Yeah, Moses is clearly now the most explosive heavyweight in the world. If we're just talking about things from an athletic perspective, he's clearly the most explosive heavyweight out there. I mean, Andy Ruiz always had crazy fast hands, but his technique wasn't as refined as Itauma's. And Itauma's got a bit of lateral movement to go with the hand speed. So overall, I'd say Itauma's a more explosive heavyweight than even a Prime Ruiz. Shout out to B-Tech Grime. Big up, big up. We got all the social media giants tuning in this evening. He says, I think the speed causes Usyk a lot of problems. It may do. But when you got a guy like Usyk who's fought literally hundreds of amateur fights, top level in the pros at cruiser and heavy, obviously he's pushing 40 now. There is a lot of ring craft there and the know-how regarding how to neutralize speed. There are literally a set of protocols with a guy like Usyk for how to deal with an explosive guy, because he just fought so many damn people. Imagine all the people that Usyk has sparred, never mind the people he's fought. The guy's literally had hundreds of boxing matches in his life. So there'll be a protocol there of what to do against the guy who's really explosive and fast like that. You know, 2 southpaws as well. But look, as other people have said, when you're dealing with youth, like Itauma has, the crazy reflexes and the endless, seemingly endless energy that young people like that have, who knows? Do you know what I mean? If they put him in with Usyk in the next 12 months, maybe he does smoke him. I mean, stranger things have happened. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily pick Itauma now if he were to fight Usyk next, but again, if he did beat Usyk, I wouldn't be shocked with the level of speed and talent he has and the age that Usyk is at. And Usyk has basically got one foot out the door now anyway. He's talking about retirement. Chicken Connoisseur says, definitely by next year, Moses will have a belt. His style is like Usyk, but more lethal. Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, if Itauma has a chin, it's over for everyone. You know what? I got to co-sign that. Imagine if Itauma's got a chin like Jarrell Miller or a chin like Hrgovic or something. Then it really is over. The heavyweight division better pray that you don't have that kind of chin. Then there's a serious problem. I mean, there might already be a serious problem, but if he's got a chin, yeah, they might all need to pack it in. Shout out to Mr. Luca. He says, Usyk needs to go take a back seat now. Big up Mo. Big up Luca. Oh, excuse me, GMS Nightmare. He says, I missed this super chat. Let me get that for you. Do apologize. I'm on one tonight. Give me a second here. My tab is misbehaving on Firefox. Where are we at? Here we go. Viewer activity. Scrolling up. Okay, here we go. Thank you, GMS Nightmare, for the super chat. It says, I almost crashed my car laughing at yesterday's stream when you mimicked Tunde Ajayi's commentary. Shout out to Tunde. It's no shade, but if I'm being objective about things, it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? How was my commentary? Was I actually commentating on what was happening? Was I giving you some insight and sharing my thoughts while the action was ongoing? Or was I just calling out the punches? Oh, left, right, left, uppercut, left, feint, feint, jab, jab. Was I doing that? Or was I actually saying, oh, Itauma's nice right hand there from Itauma, but he wants to watch out for this. Big up GMS Nightmare. Fashion Roadman says, Usyk is definitely going to duck Itauma. He's the only threat to his legacy right now. Abel says, I remember people not long ago saying Moses was a small heavyweight. He just moves like a middleweight. Yeah, that's why people are shocked by how big Moses is. He's 6'4", and he's not no fake 6'4". He's a real 6'4". People are shocked because of the way he moves. They just assume, oh, he must be a 6'1" heavyweight. No, bro. Man's like 6'4", well over 17 stone, moving around like that. Danny says Moses is not the next Mike Tyson. Well, he doesn't fight like Mike Tyson, but it depends what was meant by somebody saying he's the next Mike Tyson. What do they mean by that? Shout out to Big FRG for the super chat. He says, we compare the excitement to an upcoming Tyson, but what's wild is the hand and foot speed of Itauma despite the huge size disparity. Crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. Mike Tyson was fast, but the guy was only 5'10", in his prime between 215 and 220. So at that kind of size, okay, it's still surprising to see the speed, but nowhere near as surprising as when the guy is 6'4", 242. Then it's really strange. It's really jarring. Big up. Big FRG for the super chat. Big up Damon for the super chat. He says, Itauma versus Parker. Parker better than Hrgovic. I would say Parker is probably better than Hrgovic in movement, speed. But where is Parker at right now? I thought his performance against Wardley was very strange. To me, he had the skills to beat Wardley if he just boxed him. But he went in there trying to knock Wardley out, and it backfired horribly. So where's Parker's head at after a performance like that? Parker's kind of hot and cold. So, I don't know. Off recent form, I'm picking Itauma over Parker. Big up Damon for the super chat. Big up Matt for the super chat. He says, how excited are you for Inoue versus Nakatani? Do you think the fight Nakatani had with Hernandez will help him understand he can rely on himself in a dark place versus Inoue, or do you think he needs more time? I don't think there's enough time in the world or in his life for him to ever be truly ready for Inoue. And when we say ready, what do we mean? To win or come close to winning? I don't see him doing either against Inoue personally, especially not after the last performance. Okay, maybe go into the dark place against Hernandez. He's proven something to himself, and he'll need the resolve against Inoue, but I just think Inoue's far too good, personally. But big up Matt for the super chat. What do you think, though? You reckon Nakatani's got a better chance than I do? Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, to think Itauma basically just turned 21, he's the greatest young heavyweight talent Britain has had this century by far, in my opinion. I agree with that. If you're talking about how impressive a young heavyweight looks on the way up, there's absolutely no question that we haven't seen a British heavyweight look this impressive on the way up this century. I mean, I struggle to understand how anyone could have an argument against that. It doesn't mean he's going to go on to be the greatest British heavyweight this century. That remains to be seen. But as far as the potential he's showing so far and how impressive he's looked so far in his first 14 fights, yeah. I've never been so impressed with a British heavyweight this century on the way up. Lennox Lewis was last century, folks, in case anyone's losing their ish about what I'm saying. Lennox Lewis was on the way up after the 88 Olympics. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that. Big up Ibrahim for the super chat. Big up Relatively Comprehensive for the super chat. Much respect. He says, off topic, but do you think it's a conflict of interest for Usyk to help train AJ? Usyk wants a third fight with Fury, but if AJ fights Fury and wins, that messes up Usyk's biggest potential payday versus Fury. That is a very, 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 very good question. Now, obviously, we're all guessing. We're all speculating here. But I suspect AJ doesn't want any more smoke with Usyk. And I suspect that Usyk thinks that as well. And that's why he's teaching AJ what he's teaching him, overseeing his training. And I don't think Usyk would fight. I mean, look, if push comes to shove and they offered Usyk a load of money, yeah, he'd fight AJ again. But I don't think in his mind he's thinking there's a potential third fight with AJ. Because in one of Usyk's recent interviews, which he did with, I think, Daily Mail Sport, he said 2026, 2027, AJ becomes undisputed and Usyk helps. That's what he told that young lady, is it Charlotte, from Mail Sport? Yeah, he said he's basically going to help AJ, or try to help AJ become undisputed, which suggests what? Suggests that Usyk is going to start giving up the belts and preparing himself to retire. So a guy who's talking like that, I mean, maybe he's just trying to help his friend out, Igor, who is the official trainer of Anthony Joshua, because he's going to be getting a nice chunk of change from AJ's purses. Maybe he's helping his friend out. Or maybe he's serious and he wants to help Anthony Joshua try and become undisputed. He's going to give up the belts to give AJ the opportunity to do so. But with Moses Itauma on the rise, I mean, if AJ, by some miraculous stroke of good fortune, did manage to become undisputed, and I think that's incredibly unlikely at this point, if it did somehow happen, yeah, he better give them belts up quick, long before Moses becomes mandatory. Because what an ignominious end it would be to see him get smoked all over again. So, big up Relatively Comprehensive for the super chat. Danny says, too early to say that, way too early. Dubois has proved himself more than Itauma. I think you're misunderstanding what Ibrahim was saying, Danny. He's not saying that Itauma is necessarily better than Dubois, just that he looks more impressive at this stage of his career than Dubois was looking. And I think it's very difficult to argue otherwise. Very difficult. I mean, Dubois was looking pretty impressive on the way up, but not like this. It wasn't looking this electric. I mean, to put it in perspective, Anthony Joshua flattened Kevin Johnson, who'd previously never been flattened, who'd been the distance with Luke Partridge and Vitaly Klitschko. AJ flattened him in 2 rounds. You guys remember that? A couple of years later, that same Kevin Johnson fought Daniel Dubois and went the distance, never even took a count in the fight. So that's how Dubois looked on the way up. You know? And I wasn't critical of Dubois' performance that night. I said, you know what? Kevin Johnson's an awkward guy. Dubois is still learning. I was actually impressed by Dubois' work rate against Kevin Johnson. His stamina that he showed against Kevin Johnson being that muscular. But again, all things considered, he didn't look as impressive at this stage of his career as Itauma does. We have no footage of sparring, Danny, so that's not really something you can factor into the equation. We're talking about professional fights. In the pro career so far, Itauma's the most impressive looking heavyweight from Britain in his first 14 fights that we've seen this century. I think that's a very difficult statement to argue against. So speaking of the undercard then, truth be told, it was a pretty dull affair. It was chock-a-block full of randoms, miscellaneous, generic fighters. There was only 2 fights on this card that I had any interest in. One was the main event, obviously, because Itauma's this prodigal talent. And the other one was Willie Hutchinson versus Ezra Taylor. I expected Willie Hutchinson to win. I picked him to win when I was asked on the last stream. But there was some kind of rivalry there. Obviously, Willie Hutchinson has lost a few fights in the past. One of them was a super middleweight, and that was a shocking loss for him many years ago. Then he lost at light heavyweight to Buatsi. He was down in that fight. So although Hutchinson is clearly talented, he's very ambidextrous and with the switch hitting and whatnot. He's fast, kind of a flashy style, decent power, very fluid. There is, at least in the past, some vulnerability there that's been shown. So going up against Ezra Taylor again, I thought he was going to win. I reckon Willie Hutchinson was the favorite with the bookies. I reckon most of you guys expected Hutchinson to win, be a bit too classy. You never knew 100% because, some stuff has happened to him in the past. And also, more than anything, Hutchinson is quite an entertaining fighter to watch, at least for me. When he's really on form, he can be quite entertaining. So they were the only 2 fights I was interested in. And Willie Hutchinson went in there and basically stood Ezra Taylor on his head. He boxed his head off. His skills were far too much. The experience, the fluidity, the confidence, etc., etc. So Willie Hutchinson looked good. He performed well. The only negative for Hutchinson was when they gave him the microphone, because I don't know what is wrong with that guy. Please, 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 as talented as Willie Hutchinson is in the ring, please keep this guy away from the microphone, because that was cringe in the extreme. And he keeps doing this. He needs to be like one of those fighters of old who doesn't actually do interviews and only their manager talks for them. That's what needs to happen with Willie Hutchinson. Just let him do the fighting. He's a good fighter, but please no more interviews. That's one of the most cringe things I've ever seen. Big up Danny for the super chat. He says, who would you pick over Itauma in the top 10? I'm going to be honest with you, Danny. I wouldn't confidently pick anyone over Itauma. I would pick some people, but I wouldn't be massively confident because the talent is so outlandish. But I'd pick Usyk over him right now if they were to fight next. I might pick Caballero over him right now if they were to fight next. I might. Would I pick Partridge? Let's see how Partridge looks against Makhmudov, but potentially I'll pick Partridge over him if they fought next. I don't have the top 10 in front of me right now. In fact, do I have it loaded up here on OBS? Okay, yeah, here we go. Jalalov, I don't know. Because he seems afraid to commit himself to heavyweight professional boxing. Obviously, he's been a fantastic amateur for years. So I don't know about Jalalov. Jury's out there. I don't know what he's doing. But probably those guys. Other than that, if push came to shove, I'd probably pick Itauma over everybody else. Even Dubois. If they made that fight next, again, it's dangerous. I wouldn't be 100% confident that Itauma would win. But if push comes to shove, I'm going to be making a video saying, yeah, I'm picking Itauma. Because he's familiar with Dubois. They've shared hundreds of rounds sparring. And that was when Itauma was just a teenager. And you know Dubois being the way that he is. I mean, let's just speak openly here. Most of us, I think, are convinced that Dubois is on the spectrum, right? So his perception of what is, you know, the right thing to do in certain situations might be a little different to neurotypical people. I doubt that he was pulling his punches against a 17-year-old Itauma. When Dubois was in his 20s and fighting at world level, Itauma's sticking it on him. According to Shane McGuigan, who was Dubois' trainer at the time. And Dubois trying to stick it on Itauma right back. And Shane McGuigan, in that interview, and it wasn't even about Itauma, the interview. Itauma was unknown to the wider public at the time. But he was just like wide-eyed. He could barely contain his shock, talking about how incredible this young kid Moses Itauma is. And that's the first I'd heard of him. From Shane McGuigan several years ago when he was training Dubois. He said, I can't believe how good he is. He's in there going toe-to-toe with my guy Dubois. And he's holding his own at 17. And I was like, what? Who the hell at 17 is in the gym giving Dubois the business? Is this make-believe? Is this some kind of folk tale? What's going on here? So I immediately sought out some amateur footage of Itauma. When I saw him fighting in the European Championships, the Youth Championships, smoking everyone, I was like, okay, it weren't hype. Right? He is actually a prodigy. He's one of these guys, when you watch him for the first time, the talent jumps out at you immediately. So some people have asked me about Leo Atang, you know, Eddie Hearn's young heavyweight. I guess that's Eddie Hearn's attempt at an answer to Itauma. With all due respect to Leo Atang, he isn't even remotely close to the level Itauma was at the same age. Not even remotely close. He's very, very novice-y the way... See, the thing about Itauma that sets him apart from most other young heavyweights is that he doesn't fight like a young heavyweight. I mean, he obviously has the energy, and if he needs it, the work rate of a young heavyweight, but he's not over zealous to the point that he's sloppy, the way that Atang is, the way that he rushes his work and smothers his own work and stuff like that. This is what Leo Atang is struggling with at the moment. coming out of the amateurs, where you only fight 3 rounds, it's a much faster pace generally. Whereas Itauma, I guess you could say the first couple rounds against Franklin aside, normally comes out and he's very measured and calm. He's not excited by the occasion and jumping around like a jackrabbit, but that's what you see with Leo Atang. Do you know what I mean? Itauma's got this scary poise about him, which is unusual for a fighter of his age and his lack of professional experience and amateur experience. He only had 20-something amateur fights. It's just that a large proportion of them were fought at a very high level. Because he was so good, they moved him up through the amateur ranks and into international tournaments very quickly. We got Matt Borgerson for the Super Chat. He says, what happens if we run into the scenario where Itauma is a diamond in a pile of dog dung? That is the heavyweight division in comparison Klitschko era. Well, if that happens, then we've got another Mike Tyson era on our hands. Not that Itauma fights like Mike Tyson, but the Mike Tyson era was one in which there wasn't a lot of talent around. Not historical talent. There were some decent fighters, but a lot of them had substance abuse problems, fact. A lot of them were Larry Holmes leftovers, fact. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like Mike Tyson was bowling over a bunch of all-time greats. He wasn't. He was around in a relatively weak era. And that's what tends to happen during most cases in certainly heavyweight boxing over the decades. When you have a monolithic champion that reigns undefeated for many, many years, it's usually because it's a relatively weak era. Truth be told, that's what it is. When Mike Tyson reigned for 9 successful title defenses, 10 successful title fights in total, but 9 defenses. His 10th defense was against Buster Douglas and he lost that. But he was on top for several years there in the mid to late 80s. It was a weak era. When Klitschko reigned for all those years, Vladimir that is, and Vitaly, it was a weak era. Joe Louis, okay, there were some decent fighters here and there, but for the most part, most of the guys Joe Louis was bowling over. They were not amazing, all-time great fighters. Yeah, there was a couple there, but you think how many fights he had? What was it, over 20 title defenses? Joe Louis had a period in his career called Bum of the Month Club. And that's when he was world champion. Bum of the Month Club. The Joker says Dubois has absolutely zero idea how to defend against southpaws. Itauma would blow him out early. Big up Matt for the super chat. He says, I want to see Itauma versus Murat for mandatory. And you know what? I think Itauma smokes Murat Gassiev. I think he smokes him. Yeah, Gassiev is a hard puncher, but he's too limited. I mean, to put it in perspective, Gassiev lost to Otto Wallin, and he was well beaten. I don't care what the scorecard said. I watched that fight at a time. He was well beaten by Wallin, and he was hurt in the fight. That's the last time he fought a southpaw with a pulse. It might be the last time he fought any form of southpaw. But Wallin beat him. Bro, if Wallin is beating you and he's hurting you, God help you if you get in the ring with Itauma. So I think Itauma smokes Gassiev. Smokes him. We got Matt Borges and he says, and then Itauma versus Ajit this year. Now that's a real fight. Itauma versus Ajit. And Itauma's called that fight on, by the way. Itauma has said, before this Franklin fight, if he gets past Franklin, he'd like to fight Ajit Kabayel in summer. And that is one hell of a step up. The gap between the Franklins of the world and the Kabayels of the world is absolutely vast. All right? Now, folks, If Itauma goes in against Caballero and he beats him convincingly, and if he smokes him, oh no. The haters, and for some bizarre reason, Itauma has already accumulated quite a few of them. How are they going to spin it after that? Obviously, it's a big if, because Caballero is an enormous step up for Itauma if that fight happens in the summer. And again, Itauma called that fight on prior to this matchup with Jermaine Franklin. Was he capping? We'll see. Would Caballero even want to take that fight? Not that Caballero would be scared, but would he want to risk his position? He's WBC interim? Would he want to risk his position fighting Itauma? He's so close to getting a shot at Usyk or a shot for the vacant belt. If they could make Caballero versus Itauma for a vacant belt, maybe it happens. Maybe that's one way they can actually get that fight done. We got Adam Fawkes for the super chat. He says, do you think a serious offense is going to be the best defense against Itauma? I feel like anyone who tries to old man him will just get overwhelmed. Yeah, Danny says Mike was a killer. He made his competition look weak. Did he make James Tillis and Mitch Green look weak? Will offense be the best form of defense for Itauma opponents? Only if they have the foot speed and or the height and reach to be able to get to Itauma quickly. Because if you're a plodding guy trying to attack Itauma, you're going to be falling over your feet and you're going to get caught with a kind of check hook that Itauma caught Mike Balogan with. So, either that or you're going to need to have an incredible chin. You could be right, but I think it really depends on the fighter and how effective they are at applying the pressure. Can't just be any old pressure. Needs to be the right kind of pressure. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, is it crazy to assume that Usyk versus Itauma would be a competitive and close fight? I want to say that fight would be competitive and close, at least early. Because Usyk is going to have to adjust to the type of speed that he certainly wouldn't have seen in, I don't know what he's seen in the gym. Maybe he's seen that kind of speed in the gym, but in an actual fight, he hasn't seen that kind of speed probably since he was in the amateurs. So it would, pushing 40, it would take a couple rounds maybe for Usyk to adjust to the speed, start timing Itauma, because you can be overwhelmed in the early going by a very fast fighter, but as the rounds go on, you can get used to the speed. You can start to see the punches a bit better because, again, your brain adjusts to it. You start reading the movement, and also the fighter will start to slow down some. So I think in the early going, it would be close and competitive. I think it would be, just because of Itauma's speed alone. But I think Usyk's craft, his boxing brain, his technique, which is very, very immaculate, would eventually start coming into play. And that's when Itauma's going to start to get asked questions that he's never been asked before, amateur or pro. Big up Matt Borges for the super chat. Big up Ibrahim. He says Caballero would be a real test for Itauma. It would test his chin and his mental toughness. Win against Usyk ideally, in my mind. It would also test his breadbasket. Test his body. There are some fighters out there that can take a great shot to the chin, but hit him in the body and they fold in half. Keith Thurman's always been a bit like that. Keith Thurman, I don't think, has been down from a headshot, has he? But he's certainly been folded in half by some body shots on several occasions. I remember at one point they started saying Keith Thurman had a glass stomach. Big up GMS Nightmare for the super chat. He says, tactically, how would Caballero beat Moses? Caballero is a plodder slayer. He will be gassing after 4 rounds. Moses in 4 rounds for me. The thing about Caballero is he's got a good boxing brain. He's obviously full of confidence because he's unbeaten. He's experienced now. He beat Derek Chisora many, many years ago. He defended a European heavyweight title for several years in a row. Yes, he's taken out a bunch of plodders. He hasn't seen speed like Itauma, who has, at least in the professional ranks. But it is a totally different kettle of fish going up against the Caballero, who offensively is leagues above Jermaine Franklin. We can't lose sight of the fact that Franklin always had a poor offense. That's been there for all to see the whole time. Offensively, he's very limited. And so when you've got a guy that's so offensively limited in there against the speed and explosiveness and power of Itauma, you basically got Itauma hitting a heavy bag. Because there's not much coming back. Against Caballero, there'd be plenty coming back. But Caballero would need to be at his absolute best. If he shipped as many shots as he did in his last fight against Itauma, he'd find himself banging trouble real quick. So, he'd need to be a lot more on the ball against young Moses than he was in his last fight against that Polish guy. Big up GMS Nightmare. Thank you for the reminder. Shepsu says, against Pac-Man, Thurman went down from a headshot. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, I remember now. That was in the first round, wasn't it? Thank you for the reminder. It was more of a balance thing, though, to be fair, because I'm kind of talking about Thurman's chin, his ability to take a shot to the head, as opposed to taking a shot to the body. And when he was dropped by Pacquiao, that was more of a balance thing. It was a legitimate knockdown. Don't get it twisted. He wasn't incorrectly called as a knockdown. But Thurman wasn't hurt from the shot. It was like a clever shot when Thurman was off balance and, he tumbled down. But he wasn't hurt at all. But yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. But when he's been hit to the body, Thurman's been legitimately hurt on multiple occasions. When people are hitting him in that body, that glass stomach of his. Lucas says Opatai would get smoked. Chainsaw says, yeah, true, Itauma was breathing heavy from round 1, maybe just nervous energy. There may be an element of nervous energy, but more than anything, Itauma was fighting at a crazy pace. Itauma doesn't normally fight at that kind of pace early in a fight. After the fight, he said he was trying to win a bet for a couple of friends of his, or win them some money. I guess they placed bets on Itauma winning inside the first couple rounds. He was trying to win them some money. That's his explanation for why he was fighting at such a hot pace. So I think that's all it really was. He was just fighting at a much higher pace than he normally does, and that's why he was breathing heavy. Big up Mr. Luker, he says, who else in the division would KO Franklin in 5? See, this is the thing. I doubt many or any heavyweights out there would KO Franklin in 5. I'm going to say something which some people are going to scoff at. Usyk is not KOing Franklin in 5 rounds. Now, I still think if they fought next, Usyk beats Itauma. But Usyk is not KOing Franklin in 5 rounds, folks. How many rounds did he go with Chaz Witherspoon? And Chaz Witherspoon is nowhere near as durable as Franklin. I know that was several years ago, but this is a version of Usyk who's at the end of his career. Do you know what I mean? I don't buy this idea that Usyk is better than ever now coming off that rematch with Dubois. I don't buy it at all. I go back and look at the version of Usyk who fought AJ the first time at Tottenham. And for me, that's the best version of Usyk that's been at heavyweight. The movement, constant head movement, foot movement, the speed, everything. That's, for me, the best version of Usyk we've seen in this weight class. Now against Dubois, nah, bro, he's slower than he used to be before. Clearly, he moves less, moves his head less. He relies more on blocking shots. It's kind of like with Ali towards the back end of his career. Oh, most of the 70s, really. He relied far less on his legs. He was blocking punches more, because early on in Ali's career, it was hard to touch him. Because his feet were so fast, his hands were so fast, he was light on his feet, he was moving around, he was making you chase him. But the Ali in the 70s, he didn't have them kind of legs. He relied a lot more on blocking shots. And Usyk's starting to get like that now too, if you look at that Dubois rematch. He's having to block a lot more shots than he used to. Previously, he would rely more on the legs and the angles to avoid the shots, but now blocking more shots. We got Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, Franklin looked like he was shot in a 1990s James Bond movie. I've never seen a fighter look like that before. They went down. It was like a K-drama. Yeah, it was dramatic. But you know, and it seemed to almost come out of the blue, that shot, or that knockout. But the thing is, because Franklin is such a grizzled old veteran, guys like him, even when they're getting beaten up and they're in distress, they know how to conceal it. They know how to mask it. You know, they know how to keep that poker face. But when that uppercut landed, dear oh dear, the mask was shattered into 1,000 pieces. And down poor Franklin went face first. Horrible. We got Matt Borgerson for the super chat. Matt also says, also not comparing Moses to Ali in terms of greatness in any way whatsoever, but that hand speed reminds me of a young Ali, not saying he's as good. Hand speed alone, and I want to endorse your comment, Matt, completely. I want to add on to it and say that hand speed alone obviously doesn't equal greatness. But I can confidently and comfortably say now, as somebody that's been watching boxing since the Mike Tyson prime era in the late 80s, I can confidently say now that Itauma is in the top 5 fastest heavyweights in terms of hand speed that I've seen in my lifetime. Ali, I was born when Ali was still fighting, but it was the very back end of his career. And I never saw any of those fights that Ali had live. So I'm not counting Ali. But from Mike Tyson on, Itauma's definitely top 5 heavyweights I've ever seen in terms of hand speed. We got Matt Borgerson for the super chat. WizKid says, an aggressive Akoli catching Franklin at the end of his shots, wearing him out, could stop him in 5. Okay. I don't think that's an unreasonable take. I wouldn't necessarily agree, but I don't think it's unreasonable. Akoli does hit very, very hard. And if he can pin you on the outside and start laying them right hands on you consistently, how long are you going to stay up for? I suspect Franklin would be able to hold up against Akoli, maybe for the distance. Because again, as hard as Akoli hits, and he does hit tremendously hard with a right hand, he doesn't have anything like the speed of Itauma. And Akoli can become predictable in terms of the angle that the shots are coming from. Whereas with Itauma, they're coming from all sorts of angles. That uppercut was used sparingly up to that point, wasn't it? He had thrown it a couple times earlier on, but it was mostly big left hands and check right hooks. He picked the perfect moment to uncork and unleash the left uppercut on Franklin. And that's why he was able to knock him out like that. He'd worn him down, yeah, but he caught him with a shot he just didn't see. He pulled it out the locker, a shot he wasn't using that much previously in the fight. And he whipped it in with such speed. That's why he was able to lay waste to Franklin in 5. No? With a collie, it's not really like that, is it? It's a more predictable offensive pattern. Matt says a collie will get iced in 3. Some people saying Itauma might be the quickest heavyweight ever. Some people saying Patterson was faster. Well, Patterson, by today's standards, wasn't even a heavyweight. Patterson was at most 190 pounds during his championship reign. I think he might have weighed slightly more than that very late on in his career, but during his championship reign, he was in like the mid 180s to 190. It's not even a heavyweight by today's standards. But yeah, when Patterson was in full flow, throwing the combinations, the hands were crazy fast. But Mike Tyson, when he was in full flow, the hands were crazy fast as well, like crazy fast. So I'm not even saying Itauma has faster hands than Mike Tyson. But he's in the ballpark. I'll definitely tell you that. He's in the ballpark, bro. He's in the ballpark. Well, when Mike Tyson was on the way up, Danny, he was the same stage of the career as Itauma, 10, 12, 13, 14 and 0, and he was being compared to Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano, and even George Foreman. So the same thing was happening with Mike Tyson. When you get a young heavyweight who's clearly a prodigy, people are going to get excited. And they did with Mike Tyson long before he'd proved anything, when he'd just been knocking out a bunch of journeyman cream puffs. They were jumping up and down. Well, you keep saying Itauma isn't Mike Tyson, but what do you actually mean by that? What I'm telling you is, before Mike Tyson had proved anything, because I remember I was there, right? Like, not physically, but at the time, yeah? Before Mike Tyson had proved anything, they were already saying, this is like the new Joe Frazier, but faster and more powerful. He's got the style of Frazier, but he hits like Foreman. I mean, Mike Tyson hadn't done anything at that stage to justify those kind of comparisons, but people were still doing it. It's not like there's something unique here in terms of the comparisons. People are doing the same with Tyson on the way up. Big up Matt Borges, and he says, I think Itauma would have gotten Olympic gold at heavyweight if he went into the amateurs just with his raw talent. I think Itauma has to fight Usyk to properly pass the torch to a future superstar. And you know what? The way amateur boxing is at the moment, I'm glad Itauma didn't try and go for the Olympics, because the amateur system at the moment is completely broken. So I think he made the right move turning pro. Even though a good amateur career usually sets you up well for the pro game, what we've seen is, in some cases, fighters staying far too long in the amateurs. Because these days you can actually make money as an amateur. Back in the days, there was no money in amateur boxing. It was unpaid the entire time. Now these fighters actually get paid. Once they reach international level and they're fighting for the national team, they're getting paid. As far as I understand it, Bakir Jalolov has been getting paid quite well by the Uzbek government, which might be one of the reasons that he hasn't fully committed to the pro game. So, yeah, I'm glad Itauma turned pro when he did and actually didn't go to the Olympics. We got Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, do you think the danger of older heavyweights is exaggerated? You always see older boxing fans hype up guys from the past. Thoughts? Yeah, there is always an element of rose-tinted glasses when it comes to fighters of yesteryear. And again, I go back to when Mike Tyson was on the way up. You had veteran boxing journalists and members of the boxing community, former fighters, trainers, and etc., who were scoffing at the idea that Mike Tyson will be able to beat not just Muhammad Ali, but Sonny Liston and even Rocky Marciano, which to me is wild. But there were people, I can assure you, there were people back then from the older generation saying, this Mike Tyson would never have lasted with Marciano. Ali would have played with him. Foreman would have knocked him out in a round. So there's always the old timers at any point in history who have the most insane case of rose-tinted glasses you'll ever come across. I've always prided myself on not being one of those kind of old timers who get so stuck in the past and so attached to the past and so attached to my generation that I can't see any good in the new generation of fighters. That I don't want to be one of those old timers who has this default automatic reflexive reaction to any new fighters coming. But they'd never have lived with the guys in my day. I don't do that. For one, you can never know for certain when you're dealing with the best of any generation how they would have done in a previous generation. You can have your thoughts and your opinions and your views. In some cases, more valid than others. But in most cases, it's just a guess. What I try to focus on is how entertaining every era is, rather than would the fighters of this era have beaten the fighters in the 90s? We don't have a time machine to settle that debate. We don't have a time machine. So rather than obsessing about that, why not let's enjoy the heavyweights that are around today? Rather than obsessing whether they're as good as the guys in the past or not. Well, big up Ibrahim for the super chat. Big up Matt Bogus, and he says he gets 150 US dollars per fight by the Uzbek government. I'm not sure that I'd heard that particular sum before, that particular figure. But yeah, I'd heard he was getting a lot from the Uzbek government for these amateur fights he's having. I had heard, he was getting a lot. Yeah, Danny, for whatever reason. Okay, Danny, big up Danny. He says, Itauma versus Iron Mike at 21, who wins? At 21, Iron Mike wins. Because at 21, Iron Mike had over 30 fights and was undisputed heavyweight champion. So at 21, Iron Mike wins. The question to ask would be, once Itauma gets to 30 fights, then who would win between a 30-0 Itauma and a 30-0 Mike Tyson? But right now, yeah, I'd go with Mike Tyson because he was way more experienced. And he was young, so on and so forth. But one thing I will tell you is that Mike Tyson in his whole career never fought anyone with the speed of Itauma or that kind of explosive athletic talent. He definitely never fought anyone like that. But obviously, Itauma has never faced anything like a prime Tyson either. That goes without saying. Big up Quadruple A for the super chat. He says, Riakpo versus Clark, winner for Itauma. I think that's a great shout. You might be able to pay one of those guys enough to actually step in the ring with him too. Because it's not like that either of them have got normally a big price tag. So you might be able to get one of those guys in the ring with him if you pay him enough. But then again, Riakpo ducked Opataya at cruiserweight when he was mandatory. Like, Riakpo was mandatory for Opataya, and he said, no thanks, I'll pass up that world title opportunity. I mean, that's, you know, it doesn't bode well, does it, if they're going to try and match him with Itauma if he's already ducked Opataya when Opataya had a world title he could have won. What does Itauma have for Riakpo to try and get off him? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. We got President Brush for the super chat. He says, Itauma has the most effective use of feints I've seen at heavyweight since Fury Wilder 2. His defense is freezing you with indecision. So, if we continue the Mike Tyson comparisons then, again, stylistically, Itauma and Mike Tyson are very different, but what they do have in common is they're both young, Tyson, like Itauma is today, was a young prodigy. They both have this crazy hand speed. They're both very explosive. Mike Tyson was a very bright, burning flame that didn't burn for very long. I mean, if you listen to the Mike Tyson fans, as from their perspective, Mike Tyson was basically done by the age of 24. Think about how crazy that is. I think he was 23, 24 when he got knocked out by Douglas. And after that, the Mike Tyson fans basically say he was a write-off. So if we go with their narrative, Mike Tyson only had 3 or 4 good years. From the age of 20 to about 23, 24. And the rest of his career, he was a write-off. Obviously, he achieved an awful lot in that very short period of time. But the question then would be, is Itauma going to have a similar career, a short, blazing career, rather than a long, protracted career like, let's say, a Lennox Lewis? Is he one of those kind of guys, a really bright, burning flame that isn't around that long? Interestingly, in fact, no, let me park that up for another live stream. We'll talk about that another time. But big up President Brush, talking about Itauma's use of feints, freezing you with indecision. The threat of his speed makes those feints that effective. Because he's able to hit you a lot of the time before you even get an opportunity to react. The shots are so fast, you can barely even pull your head away or get a hand up. And so when he feints at you, you think that's going to happen again. You're on high alert at all times. Franklin just totally went into his shell. He was fainted out of the game. You know what I mean? Man got fainted out of the game. Big up President Brush. And I guess the point I wanted to make regarding Tyson having a short blazing career, how long will that speed stay with Itauma? Because with Mike Tyson, you can go back and look at the fights he had pre-Berbick and argue that he was actually a bit faster then than he was for the majority of his championship career. So, how long will Itauma keep that kind of blazing speed? At what age will we start to notice it's slowing down a bit? Big up President Brush. Big up Quadruple A. Big up Adrian in the chat. Good to see you, bro. So Jan says, evening Hatman from the UK. Hope you're good. Who won the fight? Well, Itauma won the fight. He knocked out Franklin in round 5 with one punch. It was a one-sided affair where he beat the living daylights out of Franklin, beat him from pillar to post, and knocked him out in the 5th with one shot. The man went down face first. The first guy to ever drop Franklin, never mind knock him out. And he dropped Franklin in the previous round. Was it with a right hook? Or was it a left? I forget now. But he dropped Franklin in the previous round and then knocked him out in the 5th. It was a great knockout too. Franklin's body just crumbled. The way Franklin's body crumbled, it was like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones when the Night King got stabbed with the dragon glass dagger. You know the way the Night Walker's bodies all crumbled? That's the way Franklin's body crumbled when he got hit by the uppercut. Big up Adrian, he says, good points on the speed, bro. And how long will he stay as quick for? As soon as I saw him faint and Franklin reacted so late, I knew it would be over. Beautiful left hook to finish. Yeah, Danny doesn't seem to like Itauma for some reason. He's being hypercritical. But we'll see whether Danny turns out to be correct. But I think he is being hypercritical here for some reason. I'm not sure why. Normally, Danny will side with the younger guys. He normally has a bit of a recency bias. But in this case, no, he doesn't like young Moses. Big up, Danny. And he says, I'll sit back and say I told you so. Oh, well, I've sat back and told you I told you so a few times. So we'll see whether you get your own back on me. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, if he were to dethrone Usyk, theoretical, how important would that kind of marketing be versus not having that fight? I feel like the torch is needed. So that's a very, very good question. And I actually spoke about this before the Daniel Dubois-Anthony Joshua fight. I said that in the short term for boxing, it would be better if Anthony Joshua won. Because Dubois, although he's a good fighter, he's never going to be commercially an Anthony Joshua. He doesn't have the kind of marketability. So for the popularity of boxing and all that kind of thing and the buzz around boxing, it would have been better if Anthony Joshua was going to, would have won that fight. But in the long term, I argued that it's going to be better if Dubois wins the fight. Reason being, there was the perception going into that fight, and I picked Anthony Joshua to win, by the way. So it wasn't just me, but there was the perception among a lot of people that this new generation of heavyweights coming through were inferior to the old guard. That was the perception. And so, with Daniel Dubois beating Anthony Joshua, it helps to legitimize the new crop. So I completely understand where Matt is coming from. If Itauma doesn't get the opportunity or doesn't seize the opportunity to beat a big name from the old guard, maybe he suffers a little bit moving forward in terms of public perception. Maybe he won't get that credit and that recognition unless he goes in there and wins a passing of the torch fight against somebody like an Usyk, or even a Partridge. So, yeah, it's a good point you make there, Matt. He might need that kind of fight. And also, sometimes when it comes to a passing of the torch fight, it needs to happen when the guy's still champion to get any kind of credit at all. Because if it happens when the guy is clearly long past his best and doesn't hold a belt, it doesn't mean anything, does it? People don't really give you credit for it, nor necessarily should they. And the best example would be when Larry Holmes beat Muhammad Ali. The boxing world and the public actually hated Larry Holmes for doing that. Because Ali was clearly absolutely shot to bits. He obviously wasn't champion at that point. He had early stage Parkinson's. And Larry Holmes hoped it would be a passing of the torch fight. The master being beaten by the student. But it actually turned out to be one of the worst things that happened in Larry Holmes' career, because like I say, it turned a lot of people against him because Ali was so beloved, particularly at that point, at that stage of the game. And Larry Holmes always struggled with that throughout his championship run, not getting the recognition. You know, the fact he beat a completely washed Ali was held against him. In fact, when Mike Tyson fought Larry Holmes, Muhammad Ali was in the ring and he went over to Mike Tyson and he said, "Beat him for me." And obviously Ali was a big hero of Mike Tyson's. Yeah, he visited Mike Tyson when he was in a youth detention center, right? Like a youth prison. So, you know, Mike Tyson always saw him as a big hero and he wanted to get Larry Holmes. So that's how bad it was for Larry Holmes. That's how much that move for Holmes, fighting his former mentor, backfired on him. So for Itauma, if he is going to do a passing of the torch fight, it really needs to be for a title. If he wants to get the desired effect. Big up AJ for the super chat. He says, timing will play a huge part in potentially beating Usyk if they catch him in a fight where he ages overnight. And at this age, that can happen. You know, my take on things is that the biggest enemy for Alexander Usyk now, after Father Time, is motivation. Now, Usyk says, I don't have motivation, I have discipline. That sounds hot, but he's a human being at the end of the day. He's been in there against Partridge, Dubois, AJ, Gassiev, and all the other guys at cruiserweight. Olympic gold medalist, sparred God knows how many people, hundreds of amateur fights. When you've been to the top of the mountain and you've been paid hundreds of millions of dollars, fought on the biggest occasions in front of millions of people around the world, at some point, you're not going to be able to get up for fights the way that you used to. Because you've conquered Everest. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you've conquered Everest, let's say 3 times, is the 4th time going to be as exciting? Are you going to have as much motivation and as much energy to climb Everest the 4th time? You know? So I think that's going to be one of the most challenging things for Usyk after Father Time, is finding the motivation. And I think that's why he's saying he's only got 3 fights left. Obviously, there's the age, there's all he's achieved. But he's got 1 foot out the door now. He's starting to have novelty fights. He never did that before. He's having a novelty fight against a kickboxer. So that night, long story short, where Usyk might age overnight, might not be too far away. So Usyk's going to have to play it smart if he wants to avoid getting beaten on that night. Big up AJ for the super chat. Big up Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, biggest boxing tragedy in terms of wasted talent. Obviously, you got the likes of Edwin Valero. That was a tragedy. A heavyweight, Ike Ibeabuchi was a wasted talent. In the modern age, I don't want to say Partridge is a completely wasted talent, but I think Partridge could have been better than he was had he had some discipline about him. He wasn't such a glutton and a drinker and a snorter. I think Partridge could have done better things. For those who don't know, when I say Partridge, I'm talking about the man also known as Tyson Fury. I like to call him Luke Partridge. What do you think, though, Ibrahim? Who would you say is the biggest wasted talent? Yeah, Matt also says Ibeabuchi, Salvador Sanchez, dying. Gervonta Davis, that's a great shout, Matt. Yes, Gervonta Davis. Oh dear. In fact, that's a better example than Partridge. Gervonta Davis, what a terrible waste of talent he's been. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I didn't think of Gervonta Davis because I purposely, consciously tried to block him out of my mind now because I've been so disappointed with him. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. What a terrible waste of talent Gervonta Davis has been. Big up Relatively Comprehensive for the super chat. He says, in my opinion, Witherspoon was the biggest threat to Prime Tyson. Do you think Tim threw the second fight with Bone Crusher like he claims? Here's the thing. He said it publicly that he threw the fight and that Don King told him to throw the fight. Don King's never been afraid of suing people. Took Frank Warren to court. And we know Frank Warren is a formidable opponent when it comes to litigation. Don King won that. So for Tim Witherspoon to come out and allege that Don King basically told him or paid him or coerced him or whatever to take a dive in the second Smith fight, if it weren't true, why didn't Don King sue him? Or maybe he didn't, I didn't hear about it, but I'm not aware of Don King suing him because that would be obviously slanderous. It's defamatory to say something like that if it's not true. Did Don King sue him? You guys tell me. I'm not aware of him doing it. So, look, I've got no idea whether what Tim Witherspoon said is true or not. But, like I say, it makes me ask questions in my mind when a man comes out and says something like that publicly and, to my knowledge, isn't sued for it. It just makes me ask questions in my own mind. I've got no proof, but there you go. Now, as far as the way the fight went, it's conceivable that a fighter could fake being stopped the way that Witherspoon was stopped. It's not like he got chinned with a huge shot and his legs buckled and his eyes rolled up in the back of his head and he was quivering on the canvas. That didn't happen. He was kind of bundled over. So, you know, it's conceivable that a fighter could fake all that. It's conceivable. But who knows? Shout out to Relatively Comprehensive for the super chat. Have I got round to that Peter Fury interview yet? Yes, I have. And no, it's not the one where he mentions the name Partridge. Unfortunately, it's not. Because the one where he mentions the name Partridge is an interview where he's talking about his family. He's talking about the different sides of his family, the names of people in the family and all that. There's the Gormans and the Furies and this and that and all these different surnames he's got in his family. And then he mentions, we've also got the name Partridge in the family. And he like chuckles after he says it. I forget exactly how or why the name is in the family or which relative or which ancestor it was that had the Partridge name. I forget now because I only saw it once. I didn't think anything of it at the time, right? That's right, Fernie G. Partridge praying that man don't uncover the evidence. And I've said this before, if I went to, let's say they make AJ, Big Femi versus Luke Partridge later on this year. If I actually went to that fight, if I returned to the UK to watch that fight, I wouldn't even be cheering anyone other than Luke Partridge. I would be the one to start the chant. There's only one Luke Partridge. One Luke Partridge. Walking along, singing a song, walking in the Partridge Wonderland. There's only one Luke Partridge. One Luke Partridge. I'll be cheering for Partridge. Just because I like the name. That's all. Yeah. That's another one. Da-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na. Da-na-na. Yeah, the Partridge Family. Da-na-na-na. That's another one right there. The Partridge Family. And John Fury, Johnny Partridge, does slightly look a bit like Uncle Fester, innit? That's what Oscar De La Hoya calls Dana White, Uncle Fester. It just occurred to me actually, random thought. Uncle Fester in the Addams Family movie back in, what was it, the 90s, was played by the same guy that plays Doc Brown in Back to the Future. Random thought. Who knows about Back to the Future? Tony S says, I always felt Makhmadov should come out to Return of the Mac and be called Big Mac for the steal Partridge's thunder. That'd be a decent little gimmick thing to do. Chicken Connoisseur says, need to get to one of the presses and kick off the chant. Kick off the chant, that's right. There's only one. If AJ manages to fight Partridge later on in the year, he has to mention that name. Because you know Partridge is going to try and get under his skin. He's going to be talking about how he was there ringside when he got knocked out by Dubois. He's going to be pulling out all of the mind games. And now AJ's got Usyk in his corner, Usyk in his team. Maybe Usyk will tell him that he needs to fire back a little bit. Because AJ's not the best, is he, with the verbals? If someone can get the Partridge name to AJ, assuming he hasn't heard it already, yeah, maybe it can blossom from there. AJ mentions it, goes viral. Then when I start the chant at the fight itself, then people will know what I'm doing and join in. Endo Media says, Hatman, do you remember Alan Partridge played by Steve Coogan? Yeah, of course. Knowing me, knowing you. Michael Merck says, imagine hiring a private detective to dig out those Partridge roots. All right. Judge Dredder says, Hatman, I'm late into the live stream, and I know that you've already gone over Itauma. However, what's your thoughts on Itauma taking on Usyk, considering all heavyweights mature at different rates? I don't think it's necessary right now for him to take on Usyk, in his next fight at least. But let's say he fights Zahergovich next, does a job on him. Hypothetical scenario. Maybe you do try and go for the Usyk fight after that if you're his team, in order to try and capitalize off what Matt Borgerson said earlier on in the chat, the passing of the torch scenario, where if you beat Usyk when he's still champion, you then have been validated early on in your championship reign. You're not going to have to struggle and toil for years with people saying, oh yeah, you're good, but you would never have beaten Usyk in his day, you'd never have beaten this one. The heavyweights of today aren't as good as the heavyweights of the previous era. If he was to beat an incumbent Usyk, okay, he's beating a guy coming towards the end of his career, but he's still beating him. So, in a fight or two's time, if Itauma continues to demolish people like this, especially if he starts demolishing top 10 guys, Hrgovic and the like, yeah, his team might not be able to resist the temptation, particularly if there's an opportunity there, to roll the dice and go for it with Usyk. At the end of the day, if he does lose, they can say, he lost to the best. He can come back. You got Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, I'm convinced Hatman has to be top 10 in knowing Partridge back to front besides his family and friends. So what you're saying is you reckon I could go on Mastermind and win. The life and times of Luke Partridge, aka Tyson Fury. Does anyone here know what Mastermind is? I'm sure it's not still going, is it? But Mastermind was an old school show back in the days. Indeed, Partridge being my specialist subject. The life and times of Luke Partridge, aka Tyson Fury. Who was the guy that used to present Mastermind? I totally forgot. Was it Magnus Ver Magnusson? No, that was a strongman. Magnus Ver Magnusson was that strongman from Iceland, wasn't it? Why am I thinking Magnus Ver Magnusson had something to do with Mastermind? Look at the old man's thoughts getting all jumbled. Dr. Wu says it was. Mastermind was Magnus Magnusson? Or the strongman was Magnus Magnusson from Iceland? The strongest man in the world for like years running. Matt Duke says he did present it in the 89s or the 90s. Let me check this now. Let me Wikipedia this real quick. It's gonna bother me. Who was the presenter of Mastermind? So here we go. Mastermind British Game Show. Yeah, presented by Magnus Magnusson. But I swear that the strongman had the same name. Icelandic-born Scottish journalist Magnus Magnusson. So the strongman must have been Magnus Ver Magnusson, right? Magnus, let me check that one as well. Yeah, Magnus Ver Magnusson. That's why I'm getting a little confused here. So Magnus Ver Magnusson was the strongman, and Magnus Magnusson was the mastermind guy. Okay. Paleo developer says Hatman Mastermind is indeed still going. I'm surprised by that. Dr. Wu says, I'm seeing Hatman in a black turtleneck. Okay, Jan says, I'm probably going to get roasted for this, but I think if AJ learns something from Usyk and comes back with gained knowledge, he could probably give Itauma a good fight, maybe. Look, in heavyweight boxing, when you got a two-time heavyweight champion like AJ, and you got what is still basically a prospect in Itauma, I'm definitely not going to roast you for that. But my opinion would be that Itauma smokes AJ in inside 4 rounds. However, I do suspect that AJ's link up with Team Usyk will increase his chances of beating Luke Partridge. Because Usyk knows Partridge inside out. He knows Partridge better than Partridge knows himself. Some people have critiqued the move by AJ, saying, well, he keeps jumping between trainers, this, that, and the other. And I hear that, but I think they're looking at it the wrong way. They're looking at it as AJ being with Team Usyk over the long term. I'm not looking at it like that. I don't think Team Usyk can do much for AJ over the long term. I think AJ's coming to the end now. But I do think they can do something for AJ in that one fight with Luke Partridge. I do. They're not going to turn AJ into Usyk. I don't think they're foolish enough to even try that. What I think they're going to do with him is tell him, look, essentially, we know Usyk is tremendously technically gifted. He's got great stamina and chin and ring IQ and all that kind of thing. But the way he beat Luke Partridge both times, but particularly in the first fight, was by applying constant pressure, hitting him in the body consistently, and not letting him rest. If you break it down to the bone gristle, to the essentials of what actually happened, that is what Usyk did. He pressured him, he didn't let him rest, he hit him on the body consistently until Partridge gassed out, and then Usyk was able to pounce on him and punish him. I mean, he did catch Partridge with some nice shots in the early rounds. He probably won at least 2 of the first 3 rounds, Usyk. When he was real sharp and Partridge was adjusting to the speed of Usyk, because obviously Partridge had been used to fighting plotters and people with 2 left feet like Wilder for several years. But once he adjusted to all that, Partridge had a couple of good rounds. But again, then all the shots to the body and the pace of the fight and the fact that Usyk was always in front of him like a nuisance, never letting him take his usual. See, when you're used to fighting plotters like Partridge, you can tie him up, take a rest here and there. You learn how to fiddle your way through rounds. Usyk's one of these guys who doesn't allow you to fiddle your way through rounds. This is why it's so difficult for these heavyweights to fight him. Because they're used to taking a break in the clinches and doing this, that, and the other, and only fighting in bursts. He doesn't allow you to do that. And I think that philosophy will be what Usyk and his team impart on AJ. You can't allow Partridge to rest and mess about. You just got to stay on him steadily, consistently, and hit that body. Even if you're just jabbing the body, right hands to the body. Don't worry about landing big headshots right away. Keep hitting that body, keep hitting that body, keep hitting that body. Don't let him rest. When he wants to clinch, shrug him off. Keep hitting the body. I don't think AJ necessarily, and he's never going to have, needs the technique of an Usyk to make that strategy somewhat effective. He's obviously going to need a tight guard. He's going to need to come in behind the jab, whether it's a jab to the head or to the body. But if he just sticks to that strategy, I think he'll make it at the very least interesting. And I'm sure that's what Team Usyk will be imploring him to do and preparing him to do. Will I be doing a live for Chisora Wilder? We shall see. No promises, but I will try to, because that could be a fun fight. Anyway, peeps, I'm going to wrap this one up. It's been a great stream, great comments, great questions from you guys. Some great guest appearances as well in the chat. I'd like to give a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. A long list tonight. I'm going to scroll through them now. They were James Wood. Big up James Wood over there in Sheffield. Spartan Will. Matt Borgerson. GMS Nightmare. Ricky Torres. D-Man. Kieran Malcolm. Atavistic Intellect. Copezilla. Relatively Comprehensive. Joshua Hooker. Warts. Atavistic Intellect. GMS Nightmare. Charles B. B-Tech Grime, Ibrahim, Luca, Big FRG, Damon Bunting, Matt Borgerson, Ibrahim, yep. Danny, big up Danny, Adam Fawkes. Who else was there now? Just scrolling through. Quadruple A, President Brush, AJ, big up AJ. And that was it. Shout out to everyone else who joined the conversation. It's been a really enjoyable one. Until next time, take care, be good. Catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.